forward. We will be now moving on to our next panel. Uh, the next panel is again, it has been, what we have tried to do is to now bring in perspective from the Indian scenario, from the field. These are professionals who have been there. I can see Chella Durai there. Hey Chella. He's been a really good friend. We've been to college together, so nice to see you after a long time. Hi Anuradha ji, it's a pleasure seeing you. Hi Saugata.
Hi Anirban. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And I also see Chandan there. Miss Rupali Kalita could not make it because she had an urgent meeting and with the RBI, some RBI representatives there. So Chandan is joining from NESFP.
Hello.
Hi Chandan.
Hi.
Great. And the session today would be moderated by Neha. Neha has been a really dear friend. We have been working together. Right from the start, right? You were there right from the start when we started working with GIZ. Neha is the implementation lead for Project Her, and now with a background in communications and international relations. Her experiences from implementing goal-oriented campaigns for New Zealand's Agency for Trade and Enterprise, as well as the economic empowerment and gender-focused development projects in India, have fueled her motivation to work on improving women entrepreneurship support in India. I know that she comes from a business background and she brings in all her thought processes, understanding to build and support women enterprises and women businesswomen across the country. So over to you, Neha. Thank you for being here. And
thank you for the warm welcome, Anirban, and a very good morning to everyone present. I'm quite excited to be here today and moderating this session with such an accomplished set of panelists. Before we begin, let's reflect a bit on the need for this conversation around gender-sensitive financial services. Women running their own businesses face multiple difficulties, many that are unique to their gender, and the biggest of these is the gender bias in access to finance. Their loan applications are more likely to be delayed or rejected, and there is a high chance of them not being taken seriously. Women entrepreneurship is particularly critical for India right now because it catalyzes women's participation in the labor force at a time when our female labor force participation rate is at a historic low. I think it's fallen to around 16.1 in the September 2020 study, and reports further indicate that only 7% of women that are working age in India have paid jobs currently. The pandemic, of course, has exacerbated this situation too, with 1.8 times more women having lost their jobs as compared to men. Women have typically been the first in India to lose their jobs and the last to regain them. With this backdrop, if women entrepreneurship is effectively promoted, it could potentially create 150 to 170 million jobs. And this is a claim by a 2019 report by Google and Bain and Company, and sounds realistic to me. Industry reports also suggest that solutions to resolve challenges to women entrepreneurship, such as promoting women-focused funding initiatives led by the investing community that can help women-led businesses secure funding, and promoting collateral-free and low-interest loans for women entrepreneurs, and setting up easy mechanisms such as one-stop portals to provide guidance on compliance requirements and application procedure awareness about women, about government schemes, would help women to be more well informed and more aware of what's available out there for them that they can take advantage of. However, reports from the ground also indicate that experts and stakeholders that work directly with women entrepreneurs understand that there's a lot to be realized on these fronts as well. So a lot is happening, but a lot of it is not reaching the intended target group. Especially when 98% of women-led MSMEs are in the micro category, and they find it even more challenging to access finance to scale and grow. we understand that this panel here is going to bring up some very key issues in understanding what can be done for these women entrepreneurs. So today's discussion will hopefully bring in views from leading financial institutions that are in the realm of this ecosystem on how they are developing tailor-made products and services that can be accessed by women entrepreneurs. And we will also explore how the ecosystem can be enabled to create more awareness on financial literacy and awareness around documentation and compliance requirements that would help reduce the friction to access formal finance among women entrepreneurs. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the panel here today. I welcome Ms. Anuradha Nataraj, who is responsible for the credit risk function of Kinara Capital, leading a team of more than 100 experienced credit risk persons. She brings with her more than 20 years of work experience spanning across multinational banks and leading finance companies, including HSBC, ABN AMRO, and American Express. Welcome, Anuradha.
Thank you so much, Neha, for such a warm welcome.
Our next panelist is Mr. Chandan Pathak. Ms. Rupali Kalita was not able to join us today because of an emergency meeting with RBI representatives. So Mr. Chandan Pathak graciously accepted to take her place. He is the Zonal Head and Deputy Vice President at Northeast Small Finance Bank. And Chandan comes with about 20 years of work experience in the banking sector. Welcome, Chandan, to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would now like to welcome Saugata Basu. He is the founder of CashRich. He's a fintech entrepreneur and has developed a very intelligent investment app called CashRich for investments in India. And I'm sure he'll tell us a little about it soon. But for now, welcome, Saugata.
Yeah, thank you.
I would also like to welcome Mr. Chelladurai. He's the Senior Vice President at Equitas Small Finance Bank. Seasoned professional with more than 16 years of work experience in microfinance, sales, operations, product development, and business correspondent model. Welcome, Chelladurai.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And with that, with all the panelists welcomed on board, I would like to dive straight into the questions that we have for all of you. Your profiles are exactly the kind of profiles we need in this panel to, dwell on some of these questions and share your insights, your experiences, and what you would recommend the financial services sector does for women entrepreneurs in the current scenario. Now, we are all aware that there is a huge gap in the demand and supply of financing for women entrepreneurs. And there is a lot being done. There's a lot of discussion around what's being done. I would like to pose this question to Mr. Chelladurai. What, according to you, needs to be done to help reduce this gap, and how would you propose to address this, and what's being done by your organization in this space as well?
Yeah, Nega, thanks for the introduction. And when you talk about gap in funding women entrepreneurs, all along, I work with women customers, and 100% of my customers even today are women. Okay, and many of them are very good entrepreneurs. But industry as a total, if you see, there is a gap, which no one can deny it. See, the first and foremost challenge is identification of women entrepreneur itself is a big challenge, because not everyone would be having a separate place or separate premises, formally running, with registration and all those things. So that is one category that can be easily identified. But the next category is the informal entrepreneurs. They would be running from their home, might be in a very smaller scale, maybe a dairy unit or a silk unit, as textile, something like that. Okay, so they are unnoticed largely. And they are using informal sources of funding, friends and relatives. Sometimes they would be managing with the current scale. Okay, so once we identify, then the next step is we need to understand how serious they are, how committed to that the enterprise. What is the aspiration they have for their enterprise? Because someone would be running it as a hobby, someone would be a serious entrepreneur, with a lot of aspirations to do multiple things, so that needs to be identified. So this is one part. So before coming to the solution, I know the next big challenge is the quantum of financing. Okay, there are entrepreneurs, who have access to finance, but the quantum is not sufficient enough. Okay, so the basic issue here is, assessing the enterprise, assessing their cash flow, and understanding the exact, fund requirement, the timing of requirement. So that is a next big challenge. But the first problem, the identification of entrepreneurs, organizations like Dhriti or Heron now. So the grassroots level organizations, they play a very crucial role. First, identify them, coach them, train them, make them, consume additional finance, to scale up or to produce more output. Okay, so that their role is, very, very critical there. In terms of quantum of finance, earlier, if you look at, 6-7 years before, the situation was different, but right now, there are a lot of improvements have happened. There are a lot of fintechs have come in, the payment ecosystem has developed a lot, so a lot of transaction trials are getting generated, which the financial institutions can use to assess the exact requirement of the finance. And especially last 2-3 years, your Jan Dhan penetration, bank account, mobile penetration, your smartphone penetration, low cost of data, and especially the payment ecosystem like UPI. Earlier, now, small petty shop or tea shop or roadside shops, they are displaying a QR code now and accepting payments through QR code. Earlier, even 3-4 years before, also, for making an online payment for you and me, also, it used to be slightly difficult because we have to log into the web page and we used to enter the debit card details. But it is not like that now. So now, once the transactions are digitized, the financial institution will get a lot of data to understand, so that we will be able to more accurately predict the quantum of finance required and also the timing of requirement. And next big thing is, on the end use of the money. Once the money is used properly, then the enterprise would succeed. So for that also, now fintechs are also coming in. There are multiple stakeholders, playing a role. So the gap is getting reduced. And even at my organization, if you look at, we were a microfinance company predominantly and started as a microfinance company, but now diversified into other asset classes. But even our customers are largely informal and semi-formal customers who do not have records for their income, cash flow, and all. So we have developed our own internal assessment tool, okay, to predict the financial health of the enterprise and all. So that is how we have built our portfolio. See, especially the retail loans, with less than 10 lakh ticket size, most of our customers are graduated from microfinance. Okay, so that's my view. The gap is reducing. Okay, so there are a lot of ecosystem players, who are contributing to this, and soon, this gap would. Even I want to see that there is no gap at all. Okay, so that would be our endeavor.
Very, very pertinent points. I agree. The grassroots level organizations definitely play a very vital role. I have seen how Dhriti's presence in the region that it's implementing Project Her and now has influenced the nature and the approach that women entrepreneurs have taken to accessing finance, and definitely they play quite a vital role. And moving them from informal funding to formal funding is a good segue to my next question. Low asset ownership among women is...
Sorry, Neha, if I could just
Sure,
jump
absolutely.
in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just
Please.
wanted to add to what Mr. Chaladurai just said, because I think he raised a very pertinent point, and he also mentioned about the gap between demand supply kind of bridging. But I think I want to go back a little, back to say what is the root cause of this. I think what we see in India is that there are so few women entrepreneurs in the first place. So I would say, why not we try and see as an organization or as an industry, is there something that we can do to try and increase the number of women entrepreneurs who are actually coming out there to try and see whether they can, make it big in this world? There is a lot that we can do in terms of bringing in a societal, a cultural change itself. if you look at the numbers, we have what? Women entrepreneurs are hardly 14% among the total MSME entrepreneurs that you see. And of course, I mean, it could be a combination of the fact that there is not enough credit going over to them. But then there's also these societal barriers. So I would begin by saying, even as we try and bridge the gap, as a society, as a community, is there something that we can really do to bring about a mindset change? I had kind of joined this panel a little early, and I was, listening to Anirban say about, how we need to make a difference. And, I saw Diksha complimenting Anirban for being such a good sport. So I think we need more of such people, more of such people who are willing to step up to the occasion, rise to the occasion, and not be just women promoting women, right? It's all of us out there. I don't think there needs to be really a gender specific discussion here. And that's what is really required. And as an organization, I am proud of the fact that I work for an organization which is women centric, or at least at the top we have all women leaders. In fact, our CEO, Ms. Hartika Shah, she's a women entrepreneur herself. And then we have our CFO. We have quite a lot of people here at the top who are women leaders. And we have women specific programs as well, which we have kind of started about a year and a half back. It's called Her Vikas, Her and Now. I mean, it's kind of rightly titled by saying Her Vikas. And what we do here is to make sure we identify those women entrepreneurs and try and give them some kind of an incentive to take that loan. Not just that, and like Mr. Chaladurai just definitely mentioned, there is a need to identify where the gaps are and make sure we kind of reach out to them and help them understand what kind of credit facilities are available, how to really make them come forward and take it. I mean, yes, there are those societal barriers. Not many people really come forward to start a business, but when they do, they really don't know how to go about it. How do you approach a bank? I don't have an ITR, I don't file GST, etc. So we here at Kinara, we have what we call as informal income assessment that we do. We reach out to them, we allow our risk officer to sit with them, understand how they actually do their businesses, try to understand their income and expenses, and we do kind of a quasi P&L for them, and then try and assess their cash flows, which can kind of take care of their installments. So, I mean, definitely we need to bridge the gap, but more importantly, I think we need to kind of push that thought forward of bringing them out and start looking at building that women force in entrepreneurship. And that's my 2 cents. Yeah. Thanks, Neha.
That's quite a vital point there. This is a great example of how a women-centric program needs to be different from a gender-agnostic, offer or product that's available out there. We do need to definitely identify these gaps and see what works and what fits in there. And quite a good example from Kinara Capital. Thank you for sharing that with us. I want to now talk a little about low asset ownership among women and how that influences their access to funds. Low asset ownership equals to lack of collateral for funding, and this, of course, is seen across the country and beyond, I'm sure. I want to understand what financial institutions are doing to address this very, very pertinent barrier that exists for women entrepreneurs from accessing funds. Chandan, would you like to share with us a little bit on this, about what the Northeast Small Finance Bank is doing and what approaches you have taken? Chandan, are you around? There seems to be some connectivity issue, but is there anyone else in the panel that would like to take this up?
Yeah, I can jump in here, Neha, if you don't mind. So yes, we definitely have, I think, what it takes to go out and say we do not really want to have a collateral, I mean, irrespective of gender. We say we do collateral-free loans. In fact, the USP for Kinara has been, ever since we started this business about nearly 10 years back, we have been funding collateral-free loans Of course, we do have a specific product which can be for asset financing, but then when we look at working capital funding, which is generally for that, bridge financing or any other small time working capital that we are looking at, we do collateral free loans. And we are also sensitive to the fact that, when our team goes to meet the customers, we make sure they don't ask them, we're kind of sensitive when it's a women entrepreneurship organization, that they don't ask questions like, are you supported by somebody in the family? Is there a male member? We don't insist on, anybody to have as a, additional co-applicant or anything. It's just that if they are involved in business, let them bring it on. Otherwise, we're happy to fund women entrepreneurs collateral free itself. So I think that's the way forward. And I do see some schemes coming out. I mean, there are even government schemes coming out. But like I already mentioned, it is, I think the need of the hour is to make sure the women entrepreneurs are made aware of these programs. It's not enough to have policy changes, but then we need to reach out to them and say them that these are available for them to really, go and take those services.
Thanks, Anuradha. Additionally, I also wanted to invite you to share a little more about Kinara's share credit score approach. I've been hearing a little bit about it. Would you shed a little light on what that approach proposes to do?
Yeah, see, basically the way we fund is something like what Mr. Chelladuraiah also mentioned. We are into digitized workflows.
I think
so digital lending being the way forward. So most of them today have a smartphone, or at least have access to some kind of web apps or anything, and they're happy to kind of take a loan by sitting at their business premises. So what we have done is that we have designed everything in such a way that depending on the inputs they provide us, the data inputs, and of course the bureau checks that we do on them, we have kind of incorporated a proprietary credit model for each application. So it's like we do all our checks that need to be done, and based on the combination of parameters, which is about 100 plus parameters, we run a model on them. So this credit model, which is it's not at all, there is no gender bias here, there is no subjectivity, so it's no human element which can influence the decision. So gender irrespective, the credit model takes the decision for us and throws out a kind of a yes or no decision on the loan, and then of course the eligibility part kicks in, wherein depending on the gross income and the liabilities that the customer has, we decide on the loan amount. So that is how we have kind of made our model and our workflow processes, everything very non-gender specific. Yeah.
Quite interesting. Mr. Chelladuraiah, did you want to add something here? I saw you raised your hand.
No, that is for a different purpose. But however, I would like to say that we do a lot of asset financing as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, the less than 10 lakh size, mostly the customer graduated from microfinance. As you mentioned, they do not have the property titles and all in their name, so mostly in their family members, husband or something like that. So now we have a co-applicant model, where anyone is having anyone having a property title, they will be a co-applicant. They are made like a co-applicant, and we go ahead. And moreover, the other big important asset class, gold, which is owned by women. Okay, so that is a very big market. So where the men are dependent on women for collateral.
Thanks. Saugata, I also wanted to understand from you what your insights on this are. Are there organizations doing something specifically with a focus on women entrepreneurs into seeing how they can be brought into formal financing? And are there any universal solutions that can be implemented in the Indian context?
Sure. So I'll just give you a context from a different angle. Like most of the conversation has been on the lending side, like how women can get access to credit. That's obviously very important. But I'm also looking from the investment side of things, like how they can retain their income or how they can save and invest their money so that they also build their net worth over time. Over time, they have enough savings and investments so that they are not dependent on others for collateral or for financing as such. Like obviously in the initial stages they will probably not have that much capital and they'll need capital, but if they know how to later on, save that money, like if the business is running well, and how to save and invest properly, and also access other means of financing. So it's not just a direct loan. There could be receivables financing or some other solutions for working capital management. So a lot of training and hand holding is required to ensure that women understand all the different options of financing, not just a simple maybe loan. There could be other structures. And what we have seen is that sometimes people have access to capital, but then because they don't have knowledge, they are not able to manage the money in the most optimal manner. So for example, some of our customers, like they were running like small businesses, SMEs, MSMEs, and there were some women entrepreneurs there. Now, when they have money in their bank account, normally it just stays in their current account, and in current account you get like 0% interest. If the quantum of money that stays in your current account is quite large, then you're just losing every day some interest which you could have earned, right? So we help them create a simple account in a mobile app through which they can invest it in a liquid fund kind of a thing, which is low risk fund, and it's pure, almostly safe kind of a thing where they get an interest, and also they can withdraw anytime through the mobile app. So that makes it easy for them. So they don't have to depend on anybody else. They can invest, withdraw anytime, and manage their liquidity, manage the business cash flows, and also generate some income from that. So, but this awareness itself was not there, that you could earn something from that money which was otherwise lying in the bank's current account and not earning anything. So what I'm trying to highlight is there are several other options in finance, but awareness level is very low. So that's something which I wanted to highlight.
Have you taken on any approaches to build this awareness and facilitate this kind of capacity building among entrepreneurs? Is CashRich doing something in this space at present?
Yeah, so first of all, what we have tried to do is make the interface and the entire journey very easy. We have also introduced like Hindi language in the journey, so that it's not necessary that you have to know English to invest. And second thing is, like, you have to we have created a lot of training videos, and sometimes we do some webinars and try to educate people. And people who need more help, we assign them like an RM kind of a person who can just guide and train. So that's how we are trying to train more people and make them aware about these opportunities.
That sounds quite promising, and I hope you're considering more vernacular languages also beyond Hindi.
Sure.
Right. Thank you. This is a good segue into the next question too. Chandan, do you think there is sufficient innovation happening in product offerings from financial institutions for rural women entrepreneurs, considering their challenges are sometimes even more acute than when you look at their counterparts in urban parts of the country?
Yeah, regarding the product innovations, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
I can. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hi, are you able to hear us? Yes.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you. See, regarding the product innovations for the rural women, so from the formal bank side, regarding commercial banks, for the rural innovations, there are not sufficient product innovations as of now. But from the microfinance segments or from the small finance banks side, sufficient. They are doing a lot for product innovations for the rural women. But still, we need to actually find out segment-wise what kind of activity the rural women are involved into, and how much actually the funding which is required, the seed capital actually is to start off with their business, how much they require to do their business. That we need to properly segment out, and then we will be able to innovate, I think, new products. But still a long way to go into studying really what they need to do. And not only to start off with their business, the rural women, we need to know about the market linkage also. How they are going to sell their products, how they are going to make money out of their activity. That also needs to be pointed out, that also needs to be analyzed, and then we need to help give them a helping hand in that also. So this actually in this case, the microfinance companies as well as the new small finance banks, they are well geared up to take up this activity. rather than the bigger commercialized banks.
That's quite true, and of course, I mean, your thought on how this needs to be a holistic approach and not just access to funds, but also market linkages and the other key components of ensuring a business succeeds are going to play a vital role here. I quite agree. Cheladurai, would you like to add here as well, with a focus on rural women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, sure. Actually, every organization, either you take a microfinance institution or an NBFC or a banking institution. So everyone is trying to develop certain things. Especially if you look at microfinance, even now it is happening that they work hard on customer graduation process. How to informal customers now they have come into formal microfinance. Now from formal microfinance to an individual lending, a higher ticket lending, how to take it, what kind of assessment we need to, what are the factors, we need to look at. So there are a lot of innovations which are happening in the market, like Ms. Anuradha was also saying that there is a credit scoring model developed by them. So likewise, every institution is working on some or other model, to bring them into the fold. But if you look at the rural women, okay, so their urban counterparts, they have a lot of advantages in terms of reach and the scale and all those things, but very few people operate in the rural, okay, and so they are at a they are at the receiving end. Means that means not many people would reach them out because of distance and the smaller scale, all those things. So I would say the current innovations which is happening would not be sufficient enough, and not much focus towards rural women entrepreneurs per se. And Mr. Chandan has also pointed out, see, there are there are multiple stakeholders involved. Okay, so as I mentioned, starting from identification, funding, then end use monitoring and guiding them to market. So the end to end, multiple stakeholders are involved. So the institutions can't work in silos. So all institutions, should join together as a collaborative approach, and the product innovation should move towards that direction. So actually, we are far away, from reaching that. That's my view.
Thank you. That's quite honest. We are there's still a way to go for us to get there, and for to see that collaborative approach being undertaken in this space. But we can hope, and we hope that it happens sooner rather than later. While talking about rural women entrepreneurs, Anuradha, between funding a solopreneur from rural India versus funding a collective like a self-help group, where do you see a higher risk, and why, and how does that influence your decision in offering them funding?
Self-help groups, from whatever I have seen, they normally are a group of women coming together more for their livelihood. They really want to make ends meet in terms of trying to, kind of borrow so that they can manage their monthly expenses, whatever it is, versus a solopreneur who's actually an entrepreneur who's coming out because they want to make a difference. And along with coming out and trying to take the risk, it's not need here, it's a want, right? They want to come and take that risk and make sure that they are not just giving themselves an employment, but then they are going to be actually impacting people around them too. So I would definitely say that, as organizations, we should be looking at funding these solopreneurs rather than, I'm not saying shy away from funding SFGs, but then the inclination is more towards encouraging these entrepreneurs who want to come out solo. Risk is definitely higher. I'm not saying no, but then so will the reward be, right? Where there is risk coming from a credit risk person, I definitely want to make this a point that yes, there is a risk, but then the returns will also be that much better. And as we, talk about, each of us in the panel are talking about, digitized lending, machine learning, AI, data decisions, database decisions. I think all of those are going to help us take those right decisions. So SFG, I would say, is more at a basic level, whereas this, solopreneur or funding entrepreneur is a slightly evolved thing, and we can definitely look for more such funding to try and encourage. That's my view.
And this is open to all of you, but do you think these digital funding opportunities and approaches are reaching women entrepreneurs from rural India, or are we still getting there?
I think it has just begun. Okay, so the digital journey in terms of lending, it has just started. Okay, so as of now, the rural women entrepreneurs, would not be having any access to these digital lending solutions. But over the period, it will happen. The rate at which the technology is growing, the ecosystem is growing, it will reach them fast.
I agree 100%. And I just want to add, this can happen while more and more women try to probably catch on to a smartphone, right? Today, less than 40% of women in India have a phone itself, forget smartphone. And if we were to kind of reach out to them and see if they can come and, afford a smartphone, I think that's the first step. Even what Mr. Sogato was mentioning, it's the first step towards trying to kind of familiarize themselves, whether it's for lending or investment or just to try and gain the knowledge. I think that is what is really required here.
And I just wanted to add to another point regarding this smartphone. So maybe, individual level, the smartphone penetration might be at lower among women. But if you look at the household level, the penetration is, much higher. So even if there is one smartphone at the household, the whatever, we want to communicate, that information would go, towards them. Even I surprised during this pandemic, there are a lot of, traction towards digital collection from microfinance customers. Okay, so it is, it is reaching out fast, but when we look at household level, definitely the penetration levels are better.
Thank
and
you.
Also, I'd like to add one more point. There is a new initiative called eRupee, RUPI, eRupee. So that's basically developed by NPCI in collaboration with the Department of Financial Services. And what it can do is that it can connect beneficiaries and service providers digitally, but the purpose, it has a personal purpose specific payments platform. So we can, somebody who's doing a CSR activity and they want to particularly give some amount of money to women entrepreneurs. So that kind of a prepaid voucher kind of a system is there, and it's digitally delivered. So once that also starts getting used, it will probably change a lot of things. So that money cannot be used for any other purpose. It can only for a specific purpose. That money will be delivered digitally, and with this eRupee in place, more and more people will start transacting digitally. And when women transact digitally, there will be a digital footprint that will get created for them. And hence currently we don't get their credit score. They are not into this formal economy as such. Many of them are outside it. So once they start transacting, there will be this credit agencies will be able to get more data, and that will help to give them more credit in the future.
This sounds like a very, very interesting initiative. Sogato, do share the link if possible in the chat, and we can all take a look at it.
Yes, sure.
And while we are at it, the audience is invited to ask your questions in the Q&A box. And let's see if there are any questions. Anirban, do you see any questions that we could ask? I think a couple of them have been answered already. Sumedha here asks whether there are any technology platforms to manage rural women microfinance SHGs, and I can see that Chandan's responded to it, and Sogato added something quite pertinent right now as well. All right, a couple of other questions. Women entrepreneurs tend to exclude themselves from formal financing due to various social and cultural barriers. And we mentioned and we alluded to some of them in our conversation previously. But what type of support at a policy level can be done to make external funding more accessible to women? Could I pose this question to Cheladurai and then Sogata maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, this socio-cultural barriers the women were facing. Actually, it is many women started breaking it and coming out of it. And if you look at since I'm seeing this microfinance growth and self-help group portfolio growth over the period. That is a testimony to it, because there are a lot of people they are coming out of it, and they are availing formal finance. And also, the earlier point Anuradha was also making, during the initial stage, the group structure supports them a lot. And even that helps them, to break the socio-cultural barriers, as well as that gives them a lot of confidence and comfort to come out of it. Okay. So there, it is actually slowly, it is happening. But in my opinion, the microfinance is the first step of bringing an informal customer into a informal customer from an informal finance to a formal finance. So that is the first step. Then they move into an individual individual fundings. Then so on. My suggestion would be like the definition of microfinance right now. What we have, the scope should be widened further. Right now it is based on income criteria of 1.6 lakhs, 2 lakhs, something like that, and you have a maximum cap of 1 lakh. So if this can be increased to 5 lakh or something like that, then many more women from informal finance they will move into formal finance. So that would be one. And already I think RBI has circulated one consultative paper on regulating microfinance. I think they have invited feedback from so many people, and everyone has given their feedback. So hopefully the revised regulation on microfinance would include they increase the scope. So that is one. Another one, the next big challenge for the financial institutions is to meeting the priority sector targets. Okay, so right now the funding for women entrepreneurs up to 1 lakh would qualify under weaker sections, as well as right now the my MSME. Okay, so micro and small enterprises, the categorization under priority sector lending. Right now, there are additional points, were included, like, Udayam certificates required and all those things. So though these Udayam certificate application and all those things are comparatively not that difficult, but those are all a deterrent, for women, to approach the formal financial institution, and financial institution also would hesitate, to reach them out. But when these benefits are there, this is an incentive for the financial institution to reach out to those customers, even if it is increasing the cost, or it requires more time, they will be reaching out. Okay, that is one. Another one, when it comes to these government schemes, see, there are a lot of programs to support women entrepreneurs, both at the state government level, at the central government level. But this program needs some simplification, because there are multiple parties, which are brought into the scheme, and actually, which complicates the, reach. Actually, you also requested some feedback on that, right? Because there are a lot of government programs are there, but still, the reach is not that great, because of these complexities. Okay. So that simplification is required. For example, you have a street vendor program, you have NRLM, National Rural Livelihood Mission, Urban Livelihood Missions. So all these things, would support, the small scale, women and entrepreneurs, but that needs some fine tuning to make it simple.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sagato, would you like to add your input to what at policy level can happen here?
So I think Mr. Chelladurai covered most of the points, and he was, he mentioned everything related to the microfinance and probably from the lending side. What I am also interested to see and explore is from the equity financing side, what could be done. Like, not all the ideas will be, like small ideas. There could be some ideas which can really grow big. Somebody must have thought about this Lijjat Papar idea as a small thing, but now it's a big business. So if there are certain ideas which women entrepreneurs have, which have the potential to become really big, then there could be equity financing, just the way, others access VC or angel funding. There is no such concept, like, where they can also, access it. I don't know how exactly to implement it, but I think that's a idea which can be explored. But there could be a very good idea somebody in a rural environment has, which has a huge potential and could be a multi-crore business. Then why not access equity capital as well?
Thank you. Some of the points that you've elicited right now also indicates that there's a lack of awareness around the opportunities available, especially among rural women entrepreneurs, right? So how could we enable awareness among them about the subsidies and schemes that are available, that they do have access to? Anuradha, would you like to share what your opinion on this is?
There needs to be some bit of a joint effort. I mean, it's not just enough if government has these schemes, policies, but there needs to be kind of reaching out to the women entrepreneurs, not just in urban but in rural as well. And this can probably be done, like Mr. Chaladurai was saying, maybe as a joint effort. It's not just up to one organization to really take this forward. Maybe collaborate together and see how best we can try and reach out. And there are schemes which you can kind of partner with government while you kind of extend the financing. And there are many of these SFBs which are co-lending with NBFCs to try and reach, because I think reaching out to them in geographies where banks do not really have any distribution set up. So it's, I think, a combination of these factors which can probably come forward and help in the correct implementation. I think reaching out is, for me, I would say that's the primary thing where we can, as collectively, as individuals or as organizations, we can definitely do something about it.
Feeds back into the collaborative approach that was just recommended by one of our panelists. Chandan, do you have some insights to share from working in the northeastern region of India in this space? How are you able to build awareness around the different funding opportunities available for rural women entrepreneurs around your region?
See, one way which you go about is that whenever we have branches, even in the small block levels also and district levels also. So whenever these people go out to pitch to the customers, whether it be the JLG or SHG loans, or whether it will be the small micro business loans. So when they talk to the customers, they give them the awareness of different schemes also, which is available from the government, where they can avail. Or regarding the financial literacy also, regarding opening of a bank account, how it benefits them, and then about what kind of products which are recently in the market, which they can easily build up the business. So this kind of financial awareness also they give. Plus, from NABARD side, there is already a scheme where when you do this kind of financial literacy schemes, they actually refund the whole cost. So you go to a certain village or you go to a certain block, then you announce it or invite people through the block office, or you can go to the village headman also, then invite all the people to a particular camp. And then throughout the whole, about 6-7 hours, you take a whole session for the whole camp, and then give them all the financial awareness as well as different documentations which they can for the loan. So this is how we go about in the northeastern states where we are present.
Good to know that there's a mechanism that exists already. And in continuation with this question, we have a very pertinent question from the audience. Compliances are a big issue for women entrepreneurs. It is intimidating often as well. How many issues related to compliance do you see women entrepreneurs experiencing, specifically in the northeast region? So this question is to you, Chandan, but I would also be interested in opening up and understanding if what other experiences and insights exist out there in this area.
Compliances, we just have to do the basic KYC checks regarding the ID proof, address proof. Plus, over and above that, we do the credit bureau check also. We do the CIBIL check or the Highmark check also. So if we find out beforehand, only we tell them, make them aware that if they have defaulted in some other earlier loan, and it is reflecting in the CIBIL score, those people will not be eligible for the loans, because knowingly no bank or financial institution will go and fund the default customer. So this is the only angle, and sometimes people are not aware also. They defaulted not intentionally, but because of their lack of awareness also, they do those defaults kind of things. And then over and above these things, we actually go to the do a contact point verification in both their residence as well as their place of business. So if they are found to be okay, generally then no other compliance issue exists there. Plus, we can take the references from the village headman or from the other influential neighbors also, that whether this person can be funded. So these are the ways and mechanisms which we go about that.
And this is open to all the panelists. Are there any approaches that you have taken to create awareness on what compliance requirements women entrepreneurs to be ready need to be ready with when they seek funding?
I don't think there is really a gender-specific compliance requirement. I'm sure this is across the industry that we really don't seek any specific for women entrepreneurs. Nothing like a documentation. In fact, even in our Harvikas program, it's just a normal application itself. And the moment we see that it's a women entrepreneur and it can be seen in the business registration document, we, of course, we do the due diligence at business premises to confirm that she is the person who's running the business, and we go ahead and do the discounting or whatever incentive that we want to provide to the customer to come and take a loan from us. So I would say there is nothing that a woman entrepreneur really needs to go way out, and prove that she is really a woman entrepreneur. Just the normal documentation, the normal process itself would take care of it, I would say. And that's exactly the point again I'm saying. It's just for the women to come forward and say that they are in need of help. And there's nothing wrong in seeking that kind of a help. It's just a bit of guidance. And of course, they would be doing good the rest of the things on their own.
Yeah, Megha, see, as Anuradha was also mentioning, there is no gender-specific compliance requirement, but there are small things, which act as a deterrent for the women entrepreneurs, because even that prevents them from scaling up their business as well.
Sorry, yeah.
Muted. So, for example, the Udayam registration, which I was mentioning in my earlier conversation. So, this is actually good, that will, suppose if they are going to any financial institution, they would be preferring Udayam registration. But customer doesn't know, what to do. Though it is a simple, okay, so they do not know, how to do it, for that, PAN card is required. Okay. So, in some cases, maybe, we cannot do it for everyone, but from our part, we started assisting customers in applying for Udayam registration, Yeah, from our branches, wherever possible, if customers are coming forward, and we will sit with them, and our branch staffs, help them, to apply for Udayam registration at our branch itself. So these kind of small things, we do. But when they really grow big, they need to file for GST and all those things. The complexities increases. So at that time, definitely, they might require some professional assistance. Okay, so yes, there are. Okay.
Thank you.
I would just
very
pertinent
point. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
As an organization, we have also done a lot of workshops, especially during this pandemic, where we were not able to. We used to earlier do customer workshops in the hub offices that we have. Now we have kind of taken to online workshops. And one of the programs that we recently did was exactly on this, MSME Udyog Aadhaar or other the Udyam. And many people, they kind of confuse the two, whereas actually it's one and the same. Even if you have a Udyog Aadhaar, you need to kind of go in and log into the Udyam site to just update it. So many people were not really aware. So we did these workshops, and these were not really loan specific or anything. And we went out and kind of just gave them the guidance of how to do it, including some bit about what is GST all about, how you need to kind of, just like your credit score. If you file your GST returns regularly, you will kind of be benefiting from that when you graduate to the next level and when you go out and seek, higher level funding. Right now, because they're at that, new to credit initial stages of funding, where we can probably give them lower ticket sizes. As and when they grow big, definitely the complexity increases and the documentation need also increases. So we have done these kind of educational workshops, and we did it in vernacular, and we did it in almost all the 6 states that we are present in. And in fact, even our app also, we have kind of just the way Saugata was mentioning, we have it in vernacular too. So I think these are those things which actually take us closer to the customer and making sure that we are there to support as and when they require.
Thank you. That was insightful, and we have definitely seen that these kind of information building workshops make it much easier for the lender and the women entrepreneurs seeking funding. So very, very useful there. I think we are coming to quite the close of our discussion, and what I would like to do is pose a question to all of you, starting with Anuradha. Anuradha, what is the future of women entrepreneurship according to you, and what role do you see see India's financial service providers playing to support them?
The question is actually kind of answered by most of us already. We are seeing women entrepreneurship grow, and all of us want a piece of that pie, and making sure we help them reach out, definitely do well in their chosen businesses. And I think each of us are doing our bit in making sure we support them in whatever way it takes, whether it is in having the digital apps or making sure that we give them the required guidances, whatever. Definitely there is a lot of encouragement coming their way and a support coming their way. But I think, as I mentioned in my initial discussion, or rather the opening discussion itself, there is a mindset and a cultural change that is required, which will then bring the systemic changes that are required and make it easier for these women entrepreneurs to come out and seek financing. So I would say, starting from there, going all the way up to making sure they bring in whatever is required. Definitely they need to first step out to say that I want to set up a business, and from there on I think we are there to provide all the required help. So it's just definitely going to go up from here. There's no way that women entrepreneurs are going to stop it.
And it's in all our interests that they do.
Absolutely, no? Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Anuradha.
Chandan, what default? Yeah. I'm so sorry. Even in terms of
on.
default, women entrepreneurs definitely have a lower default rate. So I would be more than happy when it's a women entrepreneur application that I'm funding. So yeah, more power to women.
More power to women. Thank you. Chandan, would you like to share with us?
The current trend in which the women entrepreneurs are going, they are doing excellent in sectors such as food processing, handloom and handicrafts, and even I have seen women doing good in sectors such as healthcare, tourism, many other sectors also. Looking at the trend, I see a very bright future for the women entrepreneurs. They just have to be bold enough to approach the financial institutions or whoever. A lot of help is already there. A lot of mechanism is already given by the government nowadays, and the financial institutions also, for them to progress. So anyway, I see a very good progress.
That's quite on point, Chandan. Thank you. Saugata?
Just like Anuradha mentioned about low default rates for women, what I have observed in our own like in customer database, observed that women are also better investors. Women are more disciplined, they are more careful with their money, and in the last couple of years, like the share market keeps going up and down, they really don't panic and take random decisions, trading decisions like men do, and they have got more returns than what the men in our customer database have got. So I think that that's very important, that women are managing their money much better.
Cheladurai, your last thoughts. Yeah. What is the future of women entrepreneurship?
Yeah, see, I acknowledge what Ms. Anuradha and Saugata was saying. The women are more disciplined and their repayment behavior is far better. And even as per our data also, wherever women customers or women as a co-applicant, where the repayment rates are far better. And Saugata has also acknowledged that not just in credit, in investment also they are good. We have also observed, because we have a flexi recurring deposit for our borrowers, so where also the repayment rates are comparatively better. Even during pandemic, many women customers sincerely they have remitted their installments. And having said this, you have a policy level support, and you have the governments who are focusing on women and entrepreneurship, and financial institutions also happy with the quality of the loan portfolio. I think it's, and grassroots level organizations, multiple organizations are working towards it. I think we have all the levers to make it as a a big movement.
Thank you. It is nice to see it resonate across the panel that women are better, not just better recipients of loan, but also better investors. I think we should use this data and splash it across all possible pertinent channels of communication, and let's see how mindset change happens with that kind of reinforcement. With this, I would like to bring our panel to a close. Thank you so much to all our panelists for such an enriching discussion and for sharing so many insightful pearls of wisdom. And I'm sure we have a lot of food for thought after this conversation of ours. Anirban, would you like to say a bit?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Neha, for the moderating this session, and the energy was quite evident. And I think the overall discussion brought in so much energy. And the women entrepreneurs here are going to go back so energetic with the thought process. And thank you, all the panelists. You've brought in so much of information, and it's hardcore information that you've given to the audience. And as we are going Facebook Live, this will be also remaining there. I think this is a good show to actually give a lot of information. So awareness is happening here. So thank you each one of you. Chandan and we are going to work together because we've signed a MOU with Northeast Finance Bank, and we're going to go deep looking at all our women entrepreneurs in Northeast. So Chandan, looking forward to working with you and taking this forward. Thank you for being here. Chelladurai, I am meeting you, I'm seeing you after college. So I've not seen you all these years. And it was such an amazing revelation, so much of information that you provided. I think I should get back to and learn a lot from you. So would be doing that very quickly, getting in touch with you. Anuradha ji, thank you for being here. Yes, Kinara, I don't know if you remember, but Kinara has been a very big support for Tamil in its years. So yes, so we've had that relationship, beautiful relationship with Kinara, and thank you for being there for a lot of women entrepreneurs and rural entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for being here in the panel today. Saugata, it was amazing listening to you today. I'm meeting you for the first time, and I would love to learn more from the investment perspective and look at how we can take it to our women various women entrepreneurs, and looking at how can they plan for their future in this saving. So thank you so much for being here in the panel. What an August panel here. We would like to close the session today. Tomorrow, again, we will have another fabulous panel here, which will be talking about technology for women and how technology is enabling women entrepreneurship. What is the future of women entrepreneurship vis-a-vis technology which is being created for them? So, which will be tomorrow moderated by Santosh from NASSCOM Foundation. And we would love everybody to be back tomorrow for this fantastic session, which is going to happen tomorrow at 11 a.m. So thank you all panelists. Thank you all attendees. We look forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Nega. Thanks, panelists.
Yeah, thank you.